A quiet life among pages. Lily Bennett lived in a world of whispered words and yellowed pages. At 24, her universe revolved around Henderson's rare books, a cramped Boston bookshop tucked between a coffee house and a vintage record store. The smell of aging paper and leather bindings had become her comfort, her sanctuary from a world that often felt too loud and too fast. She was the kind of person who blended into backgrounds, whose gentle smile rarely drew attention, and whose dreams stayed safely locked in the private chambers of her heart. Her days followed a predictable rhythm. She would arrive at the shop before Mr. Henderson, unlock the heavy oak door, and spend the first hour dusting shelves and checking overnight orders. The early morning light through the front window cast everything in a golden glow, making the old books look like treasures in a forgotten cave. Lily knew every spine, every author, every peculiar customer who wandered through their door. This knowledge made her feel useful, needed, even if the rest of the world barely noticed she existed. Her apartment was a tiny studio 3 blocks away, furnished with second-hand furniture and walls lined with overflowing bookshelves. She had no family to speak of. Her parents had passed when she was young, and she had grown up in foster care, learning early that safety came from staying small, from not wanting too much. Books had been her escape then, and they remained her closest companions now. The day everything changed. The rain came down in sheets that Tuesday afternoon, turning the Boston streets into rivers of gray. Business was slow, as it always was during storms. Lily had been reorganizing the poetry section, her fingers running over the worn spines of Frost and Dickinson, when the bell above the door chimed. The sound was different somehow, sharper, more insistent. 2 men walked in, and the air in the shop seemed to shift. They were identical in the most striking way possible, both tall and powerfully built, with dark hair that held just a hint of wave and eyes the color of deep amber. They wore expensive coats that shed rain like protective shields, and their presence made the cramped bookshop feel suddenly smaller. Lily froze behind the counter, her hand still clutching a volume of Emily Dickinson poems. She had seen wealthy customers before, people who came looking for rare editions to complete collections they barely read. But these men were different. There was an intensity to them, a focused energy that made her pulse quicken without understanding why. The first man stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the shop with the precision of someone who missed nothing. His jaw was firm, his posture perfect, and his silence felt weighted with purpose. The second man followed half a step behind, a slight smile playing at his lips as he shook water from his coat with an easy, graceful movement. "Quite the storm," the second man said, his voice warm and rich like aged whiskey. "We were starting to think we would need to build an ark." Lily found her voice, though it came out softer than she intended. "It should pass soon. The weather report said it would clear by evening." The first man's eyes found her then, and she felt pinned by the weight of his attention. "We are looking for someone who specializes in book restoration," he said, his voice deeper than his brother's, with no hint of small talk. "We were told this shop has the best in Boston." "That would be Mr. Henderson," Lily replied, setting down the poetry book with trembling hands. "But he is out until tomorrow. I can take down information about what you need, though. He is very skilled with rare editions." An unexpected request. For the next 20 minutes, they discussed books. The twins were looking for someone to restore a collection of first-edition Hemingways that had suffered water damage. As they talked, Lily felt herself relaxing into familiar territory. She explained the delicate process of restoration, the careful balance between preserving authenticity and preventing further decay. She spoke about paper types and binding techniques with a confidence that surprised even herself. The first man listened with complete focus, never interrupting, his amber eyes never leaving her face. The second asked questions, his interest seeming genuine rather than polite. They introduced themselves as James and Jonathan Ashford, and even Lily, who paid little attention to business news, recognized the name. The Ashford brothers were legendary in Boston, having built a technology empire before they turned 30. When the conversation turned to pricing and timelines, Jonathan pulled out a sleek black credit card and handed it to her. "Whatever Mr. Henderson needs as a deposit, charge it. We trust your judgment." Lily processed the payment, her fingers clumsy on the old register keys. The amount they had authorized made her breath catch. It was more money than she made in 6 months. As she handed Jonathan his receipt, James spoke again, and his words shattered the professional calm they had built. "Lily, we would like to take you to dinner." She looked up sharply, confusion flooding her features. "I am sorry." "Both of us," Jonathan added, his smile never wavering. "There is something we would like to discuss with you. Something important." Lily felt heat rush to her cheeks. Her mind raced through possibilities, none of them making sense. "I do not understand. Is this about the books?" "No," James said simply. "This is about you." The shop suddenly felt airless. 2 impossibly handsome, impossibly wealthy men were asking her to dinner. Together. It made no logical sense. She was nobody, just a girl who sold old books and lived alone in a studio apartment. Whatever they wanted, it could not possibly involve her in any meaningful way. "I do not think that is a good idea," she whispered, taking a small step backward. James studied her for a long moment, and something in his expression softened. "We understand this is unusual. We are not asking for an answer right now. Think about it. We will return tomorrow for the estimate on the restoration." Jonathan reached into his pocket and produced a business card, setting it gently on the counter between them. "If you change your mind before then, that number reaches us directly. Any time, day or night." They left as suddenly as they had arrived, the bell chiming their departure. Lily stood frozen, staring at the card on the counter. It was heavy stock, embossed with gold lettering. Simple, elegant, expensive. The rain continued to fall outside, but inside the bookshop, everything had changed. Lily picked up the card with shaking fingers, running her thumb over the raised letters of their names. She did not understand what had just happened, but she knew with absolute certainty that her quiet, predictable life had just tilted on its axis. That night, alone in her apartment, she could not stop thinking about them. About the way James had looked at her as if she were a puzzle he was determined to solve. About the warmth in Jonathan's voice when he spoke. About the impossible invitation hanging in the air between them. She did not sleep. Instead, she sat by her window, watching the rain, and wondered if she had the courage to call that number. If she had the courage to find out what 2 men like that could possibly want with someone like her. The card sat on her nightstand, glowing in the darkness like a promise. Or perhaps a warning, the call that changed everything. Lily stared at the business card for 2 full days. It lived in her pocket during work hours, migrating to her nightstand when she returned home. She would pick it up, trace the embossed letters, and set it back down without dialing. The number felt like a doorway to something vast and unknown, and she had spent her entire life preferring small, safe spaces. On Thursday morning, Mr. Henderson returned to the shop. She explained about the Hemingway collection, about the deposit, about everything except the dinner invitation. Her employer, a kind man in his 70s, was delighted by the commission. "The Ashford brothers," he said with approval. "They have impeccable taste. This could be very good for business, Lily." It was his words that finally tipped the scale. If she did not call, if she let fear make her decisions, she would always be the girl hiding in the bookshop. Maybe it was time to be brave, even if bravery terrified her. That evening, hands shaking, she dialed the number. Jonathan answered on the second ring. "Lily," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I was hoping you would call." "How did you know it was me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have been waiting," he replied simply. "Only for you." The Rose Garden estate. They picked her up on Saturday afternoon in a car that whispered rather than roared, all black leather and tinted windows. James drove in silence, his hands steady on the wheel, while Jonathan sat in the back with her, filling the space with easy conversation about books and Boston and the strange warmth of the autumn weather. They did not take her to a restaurant. Instead, they drove north out of the city, into rolling countryside where old money had built estates hidden behind stone walls and ancient trees. When they finally stopped, Lily found herself staring at a mansion that looked like something from a novel. It was built of gray stone and dark timber, with climbing roses covering the entrance and gardens that seemed to stretch forever. "We thought you might prefer somewhere private," James said, opening her door and offering his hand. "Somewhere we could talk without interruption." The rose garden was breathtaking. Hundreds of varieties bloomed in organized chaos, their colors ranging from purest white to deepest crimson. There were paths of crushed stone winding between the beds, benches tucked into shaded alcoves, and a fountain at the center where water sang its endless song. Lily walked between them, her fingers occasionally brushing the velvet petals, her heart doing strange things in her chest. She knew roses from books, could name varieties and care requirements, but she had never seen anything like this living, breathing artwork. "My mother planted this garden," Jonathan said softly. "She passed 5 years ago. We maintain it exactly as she designed it." "It is beautiful," Lily whispered. "Like walking through a dream." They showed her the rest of the estate. The library with its floor-to-ceiling shelves and rolling ladders. The music room where a grand piano sat waiting. The kitchen that was somehow both modern and cozy, with copper pots hanging from hooks and herbs growing in window boxes. Every room felt lived in, loved, the opposite of the cold museum she had expected. The truth revealed they had dinner on a terrace overlooking the gardens, the setting sun painting everything gold and rose. Jonathan had cooked, something simple but delicious, pasta with fresh vegetables and herbs from their own garden. James poured wine, rich and red, and they talked about everything and nothing until the stars began to emerge. It was James who finally spoke the truth, his voice quiet but steady in the gathering darkness. "Lily, we asked you here because we need to tell you something important. Something about us, about what we want." Her hands tightened around her wine glass. "I am listening." Jonathan leaned forward, his usual playfulness replaced by serious intent. "James and I are not just brothers. We are partners in everything. We built our company together, we live here together, we share every aspect of our lives. We made a promise long ago that we would never let anything divide us. Including love," James continued, his amber eyes holding hers. "We decided that when we found the right person, we would share that love. Not divide it, not compete for it, but share it completely." The garden seemed to hold its breath. Lily felt her heart hammering against her ribs, felt the world tilting beneath her feet. "You want me to be with both of you," she said, the words strange on her tongue. "At the same time." "Yes," they said in unison. She should have run. Every instinct bred into her by a conventional world told her to stand up, to leave, to forget this impossible proposition. But something deeper, something she had not known existed inside her, kept her seated. "Why me?" she whispered. "I am nobody. I sell books. I live in a studio apartment. I have nothing." James reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "You are wrong. When we walked into that bookshop, we saw someone who lives surrounded by stories but believes herself to be outside them. We saw intelligence, kindness, and a capacity for love that you keep hidden because you are afraid of being hurt. We are not looking for someone who fits into society's expectations," Jonathan added. "We are looking for someone who can see past them. Someone brave enough to choose love over fear, even when that love looks different from what the world accepts." A night of decision. They did not pressure her for an answer. Instead, Jonathan played the piano, filling the night air with something soft and melancholy. James brought out blankets as the evening grew cool, wrapping one around her shoulders with careful tenderness. They talked about their childhood, about the twin bond that had always made them feel like two halves of one whole, about their mother who had understood them completely. "She told us once," James said, staring up at the stars, "that love is not a finite resource. that hearts expand to hold what they need to hold. She said the world's rules about love were created by people who were afraid of their own capacity to feel. Lily thought about her own life. About the careful walls she had built, the safe distance she kept from real connection. About how she had convinced herself that wanting more was dangerous, that contentment meant settling for less. These men were offering her something wild and impossible, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "I need time," she finally said. "This is so far beyond anything I ever imagined." "Take all the time you need," Jonathan replied. "But while you are thinking, stay here tonight. Let us show you what this life could be. No expectations, no pressure. Just possibility." She stayed. They gave her a bedroom with windows overlooking the rose garden, with soft sheets that smelled of lavender and a silence that felt peaceful rather than lonely. But she did not sleep. She stood at the window, watching the moonlight paint the roses silver, and felt something cracking open inside her chest. Before dawn, she found them in the kitchen. James was making coffee, Jonathan was reading the newspaper, and the scene was so domestic, so normal, that it made her decision suddenly clear. "Yes," she said from the doorway, her voice stronger than she expected. "My answer is yes." The joy that transformed their faces was worth every risk. James crossed to her in 3 long strides, cupping her face in his hands, his eyes searching hers for any doubt. Finding none, he kissed her, gentle and sure, a promise sealed. Jonathan was there a moment later, turning her in his arms, his kiss different but equally certain, equally right. "We will protect you," James said against her hair. "We will love you. Always." And standing there between them, wrapped in their warmth and certainty, Lily believed him. She chose to believe, building a life together. The first month felt like living inside a beautiful dream that Lily kept expecting to end. She moved into the Ashford estate on a crisp October morning, bringing her few possessions in boxes that looked embarrassingly small in the grand entryway. The brothers had prepared a suite of rooms for her, adjacent to their master bedroom, a space that was entirely hers but connected to their shared life. Mr. Henderson had been surprisingly understanding when she gave notice at the bookshop, wishing her well with a knowing twinkle in his eye that suggested he understood more than she had told him. "Take your happiness where you find it, dear girl," he had said. "Life is too short for regrets." The rhythm of their days together developed naturally. James woke first, always before sunrise, and Lily began joining him for quiet morning coffee in the kitchen. They would sit in comfortable silence, watching dawn break over the gardens, and she learned that his stillness was not coldness but a deep, steady presence that anchored everything around him. Jonathan was energy and movement, filling the house with music and laughter and elaborate breakfast creations. He taught her to cook, standing behind her at the stove, his hands guiding hers, his breath warm on her neck. He made her laugh in ways she never had before, drew out a playfulness she had not known she possessed. The physical intimacy grew gradually, layers of trust building with each touch. Their first night together was not rushed or awkward but felt like an inevitability, like rivers finding the sea. Jonathan was tender and patient, learning what made her gasp and tremble. James was intense and focused, his attention so complete it made her feel like the only woman in existence. Together, they created something that was more than the sum of its parts, a connection that transcended conventional understanding. Lily bloomed under their love. The shy bookshop girl began to fade, replaced by a woman who walked with more confidence, who smiled more freely, who began to believe she deserved the happiness that had found her. She started a garden project in the estate's greenhouse, hybridizing roses, her hands once again working with living things. The brothers would find her there in the afternoons, dirt under her fingernails, joy on her face, and they would know they had chosen correctly. The storm breaks. The first crack in their perfect world came on a gray November morning. James received a call from their head of security, his face darkening as he listened. "We have a problem," he said after hanging up. "Someone has been asking questions. Digging into our private life." They tried to shield her from it, but Lily was no longer the naive girl who had walked into their life. She insisted on knowing the truth. A rival business executive, someone James had bested in a recent acquisition, had hired private investigators. Photographs had been taken. Conclusions had been drawn. "It will blow over," Jonathan said with false confidence. "We will issue a statement about our private lives being private. We have the best lawyers." But it did not blow over. The story broke on a gossip website known for ruining reputations. The headline was vicious: "Tech billionaire twins share live-in girlfriend in sick arrangement." The article was worse, painting Lily as either a victim of manipulation or a willing participant in something deviant. The comments section was a cesspool of judgment and cruelty. Lily read it alone in the library, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped her tablet. Every fear she had ever had about being seen, about being judged, about not being good enough crashed over her in waves. The article included a photo of her entering the estate, looking small and ordinary next to the grandeur of the gates. The caption called her the mousy bookworm caught in the billionaire's web. When James and Jonathan found her, she was curled in a window seat, tears streaming down her face. "They think I am pathetic," she whispered. "They think you bought me. That I am some kind of toy you share." James knelt before her, his jaw tight with fury that was not directed at her. "The opinion of strangers means nothing. What we have is real and right and beautiful." But Jonathan saw deeper. He saw the terror in her eyes, the way she was pulling away even as they tried to hold her close. "Lily, talk to us. Tell us what you are thinking." "I am thinking," she said, her voice breaking, "that I am ruining your lives. That my being here is destroying your reputations. That you would be better off without me." "No," James said fiercely. "That is not true." But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew with poisonous speed. Over the next days, the story spread. Photographers appeared outside the estate gates. Old schoolmates sold stories about how quiet and weird Lily had been. The pressure built like a storm about to break. The breaking point. It happened on a night when sleep would not come. Lily lay between them in the massive bed, feeling their warmth, hearing their breathing, and feeling like a bomb about to explode in their lives. Every article, every photo, every cruel comment played on repeat in her mind. She had brought shame to them. She had become the weakness that their enemies would exploit forever. The thought grew until it consumed everything else. If she left, the story would die. If she disappeared, they could deny everything, could return to their powerful, untouchable lives. She was the problem. The solution was simple and devastating. At 3 a.m, moving like a ghost, she packed a single bag. She took only what she had brought, leaving behind the beautiful clothes, the jewelry, the evidence of their love. She could not write a note because there were no words big enough to explain. She was not running from them. She was trying to save them from herself. The night security guard, an older man who had always been kind to her, looked confused when she asked him to call a taxi. "Miss Bennet, is everything all right? Does Mr. Ashford know you are leaving?" "Please," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please just help me go." He did, because her pain was so evident that refusing felt cruel. Lily did not look back as the taxi pulled away. She could not bear to see the house, the gardens, the life she was leaving behind. She had told them she was choosing love over fear, but in the end, fear had won. The search. James woke first, his hand reaching across the bed and finding emptiness where Lily should have been. The cold sheets told him she had been gone for hours. The panic that seized him was immediate and absolute. "Jonathan," he said, his voice sharp enough to wake his brother instantly. "She is gone." They found the note she had not written in the absence of her things. Her toothbrush gone from the bathroom. Her books missing from the shelves. The greenhouse stood empty, her gardening gloves folded neatly on the workbench like a goodbye. Jonathan broke first, his composure shattering into raw anguish. "We promised to protect her. We failed." But James was already moving, already thinking. His grief transformed into focused determination. "We find her. We do not stop until we find her." The search consumed them. They hired the best investigators, used every resource at their disposal, followed every lead no matter how thin. James systematically destroyed the business rival who had leaked the story, taking no pleasure in the revenge, viewing it merely as necessary. Jonathan withdrew from everything, spending hours at the piano playing heartbroken melodies that filled the empty house. Weeks passed. The holidays came and went, unmarked and unnoticed. The estate felt like a tomb. The rose garden began to fade without Lily's care, and neither brother had the heart to tend it. It was a young investigator, someone new and hungry, who finally found the thread. A small apartment rented for cash in a run-down neighborhood. A woman matching Lily's description working at a flower shop under a different name. They went together, standing outside her door at dawn, afraid to knock, afraid of what they might find. When Lily finally opened the door, wearing an old sweater and looking so thin and pale it broke their hearts, the three of them simply stared at each other. "You left us," James said, and his voice cracked on the words. "I was trying to save you," Lily whispered. Jonathan stepped forward, his eyes red with unshed tears. "You can't save us by destroying yourself. Do you not understand? You are not the weakness in our life. You are the reason it has meaning. The choice to stay." They did not take her back to the estate that day. Instead, they sat in her tiny apartment, crowded onto her second-hand furniture, and they talked. Really talked, for the first time since the scandal broke. Lily told them about the fear that had consumed her, the certainty that she was poison in their perfect lives. They told her about the emptiness she had left behind, the way the world had lost color without her in it. "The world will always judge," James said, holding her hand like a lifeline. "People will always have opinions about what we choose. But we cannot live our lives trying to please strangers. We can only live according to what we know to be true. And what is true," Jonathan added, "is that we love you. Both of us, completely. That is not shameful or wrong. It is the best thing we have ever done." Lily looked between them, these two men who had seen something in her that she had not seen in herself. Who had offered her a love bigger than she thought possible. She thought about the empty apartment, the lonely weeks, the aching absence that had filled her every moment without them. "I am scared," she admitted. "I am scared of what people will say, of what they will think." "So are we," James said simply. "But we are more scared of living without you." The decision, when it came, was not a dramatic declaration. It was simply Lily standing up, crossing to the door, and locking it. Then turning back to them and saying, "Take me home." The beginning of forever. They held a small, private ceremony in the rose garden 6 months later. It was not legally recognized, not in any traditional sense, but it did not need to be. They stood together as the spring roses bloomed around them, and they made promises. James promised to be her shelter in every storm. Jonathan promised to fill her life with joy and music. And Lily promised to be brave enough to keep choosing them, to keep choosing love even when the world did not understand. There were still difficult days. Articles still appeared occasionally, and strangers still had opinions. But they learned to build walls around what mattered, to create a private world where the love between the three of them could flourish without external judgment. Lily's greenhouse became famous in botanical circles for her hybrid roses. She never returned to being small and invisible. She learned to walk in the sun, to take up space, to believe she deserved every beautiful thing that had come into her life. And every evening, as the light faded over the gardens, the three of them would gather on the terrace. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, but always they were together. Complete. Whole. A love that defied convention but created its own perfect truth. The shy bride had married into a billionaire family, and both brothers had wanted her heart. In the end, she had given it to them freely, discovering that a heart shared is a heart multiplied. And that was the greatest truth of all.